Sabbath. Okay. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَاسْأَلْهُمْ عَنِ الْقَرْيَةِ الَّتِي كَانَتْ حَاضِرَةَ الْبَحْرِ, and ask them about the town that was situated by the sea. Okay? And the town is called, as the book of Tafsir is mentioned, it is called Ayla. It is called Ayla. إِذْ تَأْتِيهِمْ حِتَانُهُمْ يَوْمَ سَبْتِهِمْ شُرَّعًا وَيَوْمَ لَا يَسْبِتُونَ لَا تَأْتِيهِمْ كَذَلِكَ نَبْلُوهُمْ بِمَا كَانُوا يَفْسُقُونَ. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that these people on the day of the Sabbath, which fell on a Saturday, the fish would come in abundance. Right? Because what does it say? تَأْتِيهِمْ حِتَانُهُمْ. But وَيَوْمَ لَا يَسْبِتُونَ, but on the day they didn't practice it, all other days, then it would come to them. Right? So it would come to them, on the day of the Sabbath, it would come to them in abundance. And then every other day, it would not come to them at all. What would not come? The fish. And they live where? Near the sea. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, كَذَلِكَ نَبْلُوهُمْ بِمَا كَانُوا يَفْسُقُونَ. Likewise, we test them. We test them because they used to act sinfully or according to their transgression. Now, what is this situation? These people were alive in the time of Sayyidina Dawood alayhi salam, Prophet Dawood, Prophet David. And in this time, their command was to not fish on a Saturday. They were not supposed to fish on a Saturday. And because they were not supposed to fish on a Saturday, but here's a test from Allah. So on the Saturday, all the fish used to be there. And on the other days, the fish was not there. So this is a test from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala because of how they used to act. So what did some people start to do? Some people, they thought, you know what, I'm going to, they're going to try to one-up God. They're going to try to trick Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Na'udhu billah. Because what would they do? Some of them, and it's mentioned, there's different ways that are mentioned, different narrations, different riwayat. Some of them, what they would do is they dug a hole, like a kind of thing, near the river, so that when the waves used to hit, the fish used to fall into those kind of holes that they dug. So then the fishes couldn't get out. So technically that would happen on a Saturday, and then on Sunday they would go get them. So this was their loophole. That's one. Or some is that they used to put some nets or hooks and stuff like that. On the Saturday they would leave it there, so then all the fish that they would catch, then on Sunday they'd go and get them. Or one of them is that they got, one of the guys, the one who started this bad act, is he would pick up the fish, he'd tie it to a peg or something and put it back in the water. And then on Sunday he'd come back in and get it. So these were different ways that, nonetheless, the objective is of all these different narrations is that what they were doing is that on Saturday they were using some type of technique to keep the fish, and on Sunday they were going to retrieve the fish. So what they were doing is saying that this is a loophole, right? It's a loophole because technically we are not fishing on Saturday. But the reality is they are still technically fishing because they are catching fish at the end of the day. Okay, now the next part is interesting because a group of them says, وَقَالَتْ أُمَّةٌ مِّنْهُمْ لِمَّ تَعِذُونَ قَوْمًا اللَّهُ مُهْلِكُهُمْ وَمُعَذِّبُهُمْ عَذَابًا شَدِيدًا. From this verse we can derive that there were three groups. So it mentions that there was a group of them that said to the other group, because there was so we can break it down that there was three groups. One group was the one that didn't care about the Sabbath. They were disobeying Allah. They were fishing on Saturdays. The second group is the one that was indifferent. They weren't warning them, but they also weren't breaking Allah's command. So in that regard, they were good. They didn't break the Sabbath, but they also weren't warning them. The third group was warning them. Hey, you guys shouldn't be breaking the Sabbath. What are you guys doing? So they were warners as well as abstaining from what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had prohibited. So what does it mention? It mentions that the group that was kind of sitting back and not warning, they're talking to the ones that are warning the other people. So what are they saying? لِمَا تَعِذُونَ قَوْمًا اللَّهُ مُهْلِكُهُمْ. Why are you warning the people that are basically going to be destroyed? Or مُعَذِّبُهُمْ عَذَابًا شَدِيدًا, or they're going to be severely punished anyway. Why are you wasting your time basically? And so that group, the one that's warning them, they mentioned two things. قَالُوا مَعَذِرَةً إِلَىٰ رَبِّكُمْ وَلَعَلَّهُمْ يَتَّقُونَ. They said, no, this is to be basically the Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He has a certain, basically this is to absolve ourselves in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, like we did our duty. And what's the other thing that He mentions? لَعَلَّهُمْ يَتَّقُونَ. And maybe they might, start fearing Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, فَلَمَّا نَسُوا مَا ذُكِّرُوا بِهِ أَنْجَيْنَا الَّذِينَ يَنْهَوْنَ عَنِ السُّوءِ. That now, what happened is, as a result, when they forgot the advice that they were given, meaning that they completely ignored it, what did Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala do? أَنْجَيْنَا الَّذِينَ يَنْهَوْنَ عَنِ السُّوءِ. He saved the people that were, what? That were forbidding evil. وَأَخَذْنَا الَّذِينَ ظَلَمُوا بِعَذَابٍ بَئِيسٍ بِمَا كَانُوا يَفْسُقُونَ. And we punished the other group, basically. And what was the punishment? This is one of the harsh punishments that's mentioned in the Quran. I mean, many of them are harsh, but this one is, it's a very disgraceful, like a humiliating punishment. What does Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala say? فَلَمَّا عَتَوْا عَمَّالُهُ. And when they persisted in doing what they were doing, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says to them, قُلْنَا لَهُمْ كُونُوا خِرَدَةً خَاسِئِينَ. Become apes, disgraced. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala turned these people into what? Into apes. Like actual physical apes. Physically, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala changed their complete state. And it's mentioned that the group that was trying to warn them all the time, they eventually basically kind of separated themselves. They went to another town. Then one day they got up and they didn't really hear the noises that they normally would in another town. Or the other part of town maybe. And they went to go check and they found all the people had been turned into monkeys. And Ibn Abbas in one narration says that some of them were turned into monkeys and some of them were turned into swine. And the book of Tafsir also mentions that some of the apes, they still retained their human eyes. The males retained their eyes when they were human, and the women maintained their eyes from when they were human. And that is how people were able to recognize that these people have been turned into what? Apes. Subhanallah. And so that is the punishment of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that came on these people. Now it might seem harsh. It might seem like a harsh punishment. One more thing. Ibn Abbas mentions that this stayed on them for 3 days, that they were like this. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and then they passed away, everybody. So for 3 days they remained in this state as monkeys, right? So they were fully aware of what happened to them. But after 3 days, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala destroyed them, and in that time they were not able to reproduce or continue. So no one can, someone might say, well, are these monkeys that are around us, are they descendants of them? The answer is no, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala took away their ability to reproduce. But this comes to a really good thing, is that why such a harsh punishment? Someone might ask that question, why such a harsh punishment? Well, we don't look at what's being done, look at who it's being done to, whose order is being disobeyed. It's not some king, it's not some, local town guy. It is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Allah gave a command. Our job is sami'na wa ta'ana. We hear and we obey. That is where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teaches us humility through this story, that the human being is humble before Allah. Whatever Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, I don't try to find loopholes, maybe this way, that way, I'm going to work around it. Because that's what they try to do. Allah gave a command, it's like, well, no, I want to see how I can work it into my benefit. And the human being, the insan, the job of the insan is to obey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala unconditionally, right? Whether we understand the full logic and reasoning behind it or not, right? So like for example, making wudu. Someone might say, okay, there's a logic behind it, but you might say there's no specific logic. If you're just coming to move motions, why do you necessarily need to wash yourself, right? But we don't think that way. Why? Because it's a command from Allah. Allah told me to do it, and that's it, right? And there's nothing wrong with asking the hikmah, the wisdom behind a ruling. There's nothing wrong with inquiring. There's a difference between inquiring and asking, and there's a difference between trying to, quote unquote, outsmart Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or trying to find a loophole in a way where you are completely going against the command of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us obedient servants of Him, and we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to be those that follow His commands with happiness and with love. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give us the ability to act on what we said, what we heard. وآخر دعوانا الحمد لله رب العالمين سبحان الله وبحمده سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك.